Welcome to the Huff-N-Stuff podcast, where we talk about board games, card games, and anything in the tabletop hobby. We're so glad you joined us, because we have loads of great stuff from our contributors like Perception Check. So sit back, relax, and join our show. And here we go!
31 flat. That's good enough to take the pole in the last race here.
Hello! This is episode 12, April 26th, and we're here to talk about Formula D, how to convert your friends, word of the day, and some other fun stuff. But before I get into any of that, let's go to our next segment.
Hey guys, now it's time to talk about what we've been playing recently.
That's right, Elise. Now we're going to talk about what we've been playing. Stephen, why don't you start?
Okay, yeah, let's see. I started 2 weeks ago, or a week ago Thursday, I played Core Worlds. We played with our gentlemen at game night and enjoyed that card game there.
That was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, a week ago. Mm-hmm. And then Descent, we played just this past Thursday. And that was a very interesting dungeon crawler.
Before you jump into Descent here, why don't you tell me a little bit about Core Worlds? Because on our space episode, we had talked about it. Neither of us had played it before, so I'm curious about your thoughts about it.
All right, yeah. It was definitely a good game. We talked about that in our segment, or our category of card games with a space theme. And as it compares to Eminent Domain, Race for the Galaxy is the other one. Core Worlds, I think I actually probably have enjoyed the best out of my play of the three of them. It was very engaging. I liked what was going on. The design of the cards is probably the best out of the three games.
The artwork was very nice.
The artwork is really, really good. You know, the different ships and vehicles and the infantry that you get, that you're all building up and conquering your planets. It looks really good. I guess the planet design is a little, not simple, but they didn't go for, in Eminent Domain, there's planets with rings around them and kind of a nebula in the background kind of a thing. In Core World, I don't recall that so much, but that was okay. Nothing wrong with that. No, I enjoyed it. The gameplay went really well for two of us out of the three having played before.
Yeah, you and I had both not played before. There were some little things that it was that hard to pick up. We played the expansion with it, which made it a little more complicated, but it wasn't a big deal. And Tim, the one who owned it, was a little worried, I think, that we were understanding it all. And I mean, there were a few things, like I didn't quite understand how certain cards were, what their true meanings were, I guess I should say. But it seemed fairly self-explanatory for once you got the cards and knew how everything interacted with the different components. It wasn't a big deal as far as like picking it up. It was fairly fast. And I liked how you had to build up certain forces in order to take a planet. Like sometimes on some planets you had to take a certain number of spaceships and certain number of ground troops in card form, obviously. And then you had to put that down on your board or on your space table, and then you could take that planet. And it ramped up. Each round got a little bit harder as far as like what you needed to take each planet. And all the getting planets just gave you, I can't remember, what was the energy that we were gleaning from the planets?
Yes, your energy was your resource, right. Your energy production. So there was one of the phases of play was your energy phase, where you recovered all the energy from all your worlds or certain cards. You could also, I'm sure you remember, we had those energy boost cards or whatever, that we had an extra generator that turn or whatever, and it came out of our deck that gave us a boost. And if you didn't, those cards worked very interestingly for you a few times, where we had more energy production than you did. So that gave you a boost of 2 versus a boost of only 1.
Mm-hmm. I did find it at times, that game, to be a little frustrating, because towards the end, I didn't know, so like some games, if you don't plan right in the beginning stages, you're going to be, I don't want to say out of it, but you're going to feel a little bit like you can't compete. And I felt a little bit that way with this game. But I guess with a few more plays, that should fix itself. I did find with that game, one of the things I didn't like about it is it seemed like there was just one way to win. And the one way was to get that planet, to make sure you had enough energy so you could have enough to put cards down, because the cards would come in, and unless you had the right kind of energy, you couldn't play that card, and those cards were what got you the additional planets. I found that there wasn't a point salad in this game. Now, with that said, it's still a great game, and it still was fun. Great artwork, great components, all the cards were nice and thick, a nice linen stock, great company. You and Tim, great people to play with. So on the whole, it was a great game. It's not something I think I'm going to own.
Yeah, I understand it. I guess part of my positive opinion was that I won. I won that game.
Yeah, right.
And you are very correct that it does take a lot of pre-planning, and we found out at the end that Tim had sort of a leg up in a way. Even though he didn't win, he had a plan because he had already played of how what his best chance of getting the most points at the very last round were.
Right.
And that didn't work so well for us.
Right.
It came down to pure luck in circumstances at the end. You took one of the planets I was banking on getting, even though you couldn't take any others. And then because of that, I actually took another planet that actually helped me more, because I didn't realize that cards I had removed from my deck still would count to that point value. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of interesting that way. I guess that is a downside to games, that's something that I do consider a negative, when a brand new player is automatically at a disadvantage. In some cases, I guess I wouldn't say severe in this particular game.
No, it's not severe.
But that is a negative.
Yeah. You could argue that most games out there, you're at a disadvantage when you've never played it before. You could argue that about Monopoly even. You're going to be at a disadvantage for the guy who's played it before. So
I guess you're right.
I mean, that part I can understand. I don't like when it's just there's only one way to win. So let's move on. We've got a lot to cover today. The game I played last Saturday, we had a game group with the Southwest Valley Gaming Group, and Eric pulled out Jamaica. This is a game that I really enjoy. It basically is a pirate racing game where you're racing around this island, or Jamaica, and you're racing each other. And along the way, you pick up treasure. If you fall in the same space grid as another ship, you have to fight them. It's just a great game, and the artwork and the components, I think it's from Days of Wonder. And this game is just, if I could find it for anything, the price I would want it. Because right now, I think the price on Amazon is like $50, $60, and that's way too expensive for what it is, because it's a quick racing game for families. And I don't know, Stephen, have you played this game before?
I have not played Jamaica. I've been wanting to. I've heard good things about it, and it is interesting to me. I definitely am interested in pirate themes. It's kind of an interest of mine. And the racing theme, I do like racing mechanics in certain games, and I've heard that game does a really good job with it. So I was, in researching for our episode here, reading up and watching some videos about gameplay in Jamaica, and it does seem like a very good game. So I am looking forward to hopefully getting my hands on it sometime soon.
Yeah, Jamaica is a really solid, good, quick, somewhat simplified racing game. It's just a lot of fun, and all the artwork is just killer. I mean, it's one of the best. Now, you had brought up Descent. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Descent?
Okay. We had an interesting time playing Descent there. We did the intro scenario and then a two-part quest just in our 1 3-hour evening there at game night, and it was a lot of fun. The 4 of us that were playing, there were 4 of
there
us,
was 5
and then
of us.
Our dungeon master for Brian, and we had a really good time, and I liked the mechanics of it. The map was a little small, it seemed.
Yeah.
And the little enemies that we were fighting could move so far.
Right.
It seemed. We didn't move. I guess we could move that far, but when we as players have to stop and fight, it means that the monsters kind of get quite a bit of a leg up. Now, they have a lot less health than we do, and they do less damage. So, or I guess they don't really do less damage. They would, as players, kind of upgrade their characters, in a campaign. But in this case, it worked out. We came down right to the end, and it just, what got us was that decision that we made to try and pick up some more loot before we moved on to the second part of that quest.
Yeah.
And the damage that we took there made it more difficult in the second part of that quest. But, Brian complimented me on playing the archer character correctly, that I definitely stayed at range as best as possible. There were a few times I got some really good pot shots on players or enemies in a very key moment.
I also was playing that with you, and Brian is the one who owns this, and let me tell you, this game surprised me. I did not think it was going to be as fun as it was. This game, I would say, is probably it is the best dungeon crawl I've ever played. It's that good.
That's high praise.
It is high praise because there's a lot of them out there. It's a popular type of game to build. It's fairly easy to make one of these, but to do it right, obviously, just like a lot of things, is the real key, right? I mean, it's hard to make something. It's easy to make something, but it's hard to make it good. And they've done such a great job with this game. One of the things I loved about it, I think Eric sort of made that distinction, that it felt like D&D 4th edition rules, but really simplified. And so if they did that, if they really did try to take something like D&D 4th edition, it was great and simplify it. In many ways, it was kind of fiddly. There was a lot of number crunching. And so by doing what Fantasy Flight has done with this game by simplifying it down and making, what the game is now, it's great. Brian had all his figures painted, and you could tell he really put some love into this. And he did a great job teaching it too, I thought.
I agree. He did a great job teaching. I came in, I think, after he had already given you and Eric the walkthrough a little bit, maybe. But he caught me up really, really quickly, and I never really had any point where I was going, hey, wait, stop, explain this. There were a few times we had a few minor questions, but he basically stopped himself every time he came to something new that he needed to tell us about.
Right.
So he was really awesome about that. And you're right, as far as his miniatures goes, I think we had at least 4 or 5 people come by that evening, while we were playing, going, hey, can I look at these miniatures? These are awesome. He had them all set up in his little containers on top of the table there next to us.
Yeah,
so
and
he
the
did a
key,
really good job with it.
Right, and the key to that is that when someone goes to all that trouble, because Descent's got 20 or 30 miniatures in the box. When you go to that much trouble to paint all of them, it shows the passion that you have for that game, and it was fun to see.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the reasons why people kept coming over. Now, let's move on real quick. We've got a lot to cover today. Cosmic Encounter is the other game I played last Saturday, and Eric had brought this game. Again, Eric brought it again. Eric's got all these great games. I need to start borrowing these games. We played it, and there was 4 of us. It was Brad, a friend of ours, Matt, that I've never met before, and he showed up, and that was great. We had a great time with him. And then, of course, Eric and I. Now, I've always wanted to play this because I keep hearing, about this game. And especially Tom Vassell, of course, that's his favorite game. So I'm like, okay, let's do this because I'm very interested. And since, the more interactive games I play, the more I'm sort of negotiation type games, I guess you could say. And this game is kind of what that is. You negotiate to try to help take over planets. Now, what they do in the setup, for those of you who have not played it before, you don't have a traditional board. Every player has 5 planets, so it's 20 planets all around. And there's a ton of races to pick from. So you randomly pick 2 or 3 characters or races you want to play, and then you pick one of those. And they have really kind of goofy things, like if you're in last place and you have lost all of your ships, then you play this and you win the game. Bam, outright. So, so it has some funny things going on with it. And that, I think, in a nutshell, is how Matt's kind of summed it up by saying it's outrageous, it's goofy, but that's why you play it. It's another Ameritrash style game. It pushes you to do outrageous things because it has the cards in your hands, things you can play. When it comes your turn, you have to have, I think it's either 3 to 5 foreign planets. Once you have 3 or 5 foreign planets under your control, you win the game. And gameplay can last anywhere from 20 minutes to 50. So it's a very fast game. And I thought...
Oh, I didn't realize it was so short.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be for 2 or 3 hours. We played 3 sets of this. And each time someone else won, which is a good sign. You know, when it's just one guy winning all the time, that's a bad sign on a game. Someone different won every time. And it was kind of fun. I think it would take more plays, and you'd have to be with the right people. Because if someone gets in there and they're overly competitive or they're too aggressive, that it would just make people, it would put everyone on edge. Oh, that guy, and they're like, and they're getting all, mad at each other. That's the only downfall of this game. The artwork was good. The components were good. It's a Fantasy Flight game, so obviously a lot of that is not going to be a problem. But I wouldn't mind playing it again. I'm not sure I would want to own it, but it's a really solid game. And it's interesting how the little pieces stack on top of each other. If you've ever seen the game, photos of it.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it a lot, so I'm not that familiar with it. But no, that's good to hear. I've definitely looked forward to it. We were going to play it a couple weeks ago. We jumped into Core Worlds instead, and I'll give it a look as soon as I can.
Yeah, and that is what we've been playing recently.
And that little needle on the tackles into the red and reads 9,000 RPM. That's bad.
Hey now, we got something new and exciting for you guys. No, video games are off the hook. So why don't we talk about that with our newest team, the Game Detective. Okay, take it away, guys.
Video Game Detectives.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Video Game Detectives. I'm your host, Jason Griffin, and today I have Victoria, aka the Meep, and she's here to talk about her favorite game, which is Minecraft.
Yes.
Victoria is 9 years old, and she likes to play a lot of Minecraft, and so I thought it would be nice for her to comment as a 9-year-old, somebody who understands the game. It's pretty popular. If you have kids, you probably know about it. If you don't have kids and you have friends who have kids, you know about it. If you don't have kids, you don't have friends who have kids, and you have friends who are like children, then you probably know about it. So it's a hot game. I think it's on the downhill slope of its popularity because it's just so ingrained in the culture now. I've been to stores and I see items that look like things that you would craft in Minecraft. I've played the game, and she really likes it, and I think it's a fun game. I've kind of gotten over the novelty of it, but she's still going strong, and she likes to play it every day. So Tori, you want to tell me a little bit about Minecraft?
Sure.
What is Minecraft? What is it?
Minecraft is a game where, it's basically just blocks, only squares, 3D. You play as a Steve, and you have a world where you can pretty much do whatever you want. You can go on 2 modes, survival or creative. Survival is where you go on your own, like you have to find food, you have to make a shelter, you have to build your own things to survive. And on creative mode, you have all the blocks ready for you, and you can get them whatever time you want, and you can build whatever you want. So you pretty much get the easy way in creative.
Yeah, in creative mode, you're not going to get attacked, right? You're not going to have to worry about anything trying to come out and hurt you and hurt your Steve, right?
Right.
So what's your favorite part about Minecraft?
My favorite part about Minecraft is that you can play with your friends, and it's your world. You can pretty much do whatever you want. It's your perspective, and you do what you want.
So, how do you make the things that you want? You use the craft table, right? Like, how does that work?
Well, it starts with, simple blocks, and then you can make them into not-so-simple blocks.
Like what? What's the most complicated thing you've had to make?
Well, I don't really play survival that much. I mostly play creative, so I can build things easier.
What's different in creative? Do you have access to different things, or?
You have access to all the blocks in Minecraft. So you can just get the building blocks by pushing a certain button, and then you can get the block that you need, and then you can start building or do whatever you need.
Mm-hmm. What do you like to build?
Definitely houses.
Mm-hmm.
I try to start small and then go big.
Yeah.
Make sure it has plenty of room. Basements, and let's see. Let's just say
I've seen some pretty crazy things that you've been when you play with some of your friends. That I've seen some really big like stores that you recreated, and it's very intricate, and it has a lot of things inside of it. Like it's like a Walmart, I think, is what your cousin made, right?
Yeah, Walmart.
It's like a shopping
GameStop.
center. They made a shopping center, and there's a Walmart, a GameStop, and you go inside of them, and they actually look like a GameStop and a Walmart. Well, within reason. Obviously, you don't have, you can't craft video game shelves unless you've hacked the game and created a mod or something. But they play the basic game, and you play it on what platform do you play it on? 360.
360 usually.
Yeah. Have you played it on the computer before?
No, I think I played the Pocket Edition a few times.
Oh, okay, on a cell phone? Like a
Yeah.
mobile? Right. Well, which way did you like better, doing it on mobile or?
Well, Pocket Edition and Xbox 360 have different ways. See, Pocket Edition has some blocks that an Xbox 360 don't, and they don't have some blocks that are kind of important. In Xbox 360, like redstone torches, for example, you won't have them in Pocket Edition.
Oh, okay. So
And then they have like a little hay block that you can't get in Xbox 360.
Oh, so it has different things on the mobile game than it has on the 360, and so you can make different things out of them then, or yeah.
Yeah.
But is it still as fun?
Yeah, it's still fun either way, but
Do they
some
have
of the
it?
blocks you would want to...
Now you have a
Yeah.
DS. They have a Minecraft for the DS?
I heard one of my friends talking about it.
Do they have it?
One of my friends said yes, but for $75.
Oh, well, okay. Did he like it though? I mean, did he enjoy it? Did he play it?
Oh no, he didn't have it, but
Oh, he just
heard.
knows about it. Oh, okay. So it's available on the 3DS, but it's not something he has, and you
Yeah.
haven't played it, so you don't know.
I don't know.
Well, that's all right. Okay. Well, now there's a bad guy in the world of Minecraft, right?
Yes.
And what's his name?
His name is Hero Brian.
Hero Brian.
Yes.
And who
They
is
came up
Hero
with the
Brian?
name because they saw him so much that they decided to give him a name.
Where did he come from?
I've heard stories about him, he's Notch's dead brother, but
Who's
he's not
Notch?
really dead.
Who's Notch?
Notch is the creator of the game, also known as Marcus Pearson.
Oh, okay. And so, Hero Brian, you're saying, is Notch's brother?
Yes, in a fake way and a real way.
Oh, okay. So how is he in the fake way?
In the fake way, well, in one of the videos, it mentions, like, someone sees Hero Brian and wants to ask Notch if he had a brother, because he heard that Hero Brian was Notch's dead brother, and they said yes, but he's not with them anymore. So that must mean he has a dead brother, in a way.
Okay. I see. So Notch was asked if he had a dead brother. His brother is dead in real life, but people are saying that Hero Brian is his dead brother's ghost in the game, or?
In the game, yes, but just
okay.
in the game, not in real life.
Oh, okay. So the game's not haunted. No? Is that what you're saying? Sort of haunted because he just shows up randomly. but
Here,
no
I'll
one
talk
can-
about what he does.
Yeah,
in
what does he do?
Hero.
What does he do? What does he do in
Okay, there's like two ways to do. Well, the things that I've heard. You can build a spawner. You put a mossy stone brick in the middle. You surround it with blocks of gold. Put netherrack on top of the mossy stone brick. Put redstone torches in the shape of a cross, but just not on top of the netherrack. And you get flint and steel and put it on top of the netherrack, and you should see him appear. If you want to get the best effects, make sure the seed is Hero Brian. Make sure it's surrounded by trees with no leaves, like in a circle. And,
So you're basically making
maybe rainy.
a digital seance. That's what's happening.
Well, if you
Calling
wanted
forth his spirit. That's nice.
if you wanted to get the best effect, then that's what I would suggest.
This game's starting to sound creepy.
Okay, now I'm gonna
So
say
what
what
it-
he does.
Yeah, what does he do? What is?
Okay, so basically he enters the world and he would create signs that says leave or like you had your chances, turn back now. He would say some crazy stuff that would make you creep out and want to stop playing Minecraft for the rest of your life.
That's
Like he would usually leave trails of redstone torches, signs, maybe netherrack with on fire. He can sometimes burn your stuff down. Definitely your house. That's what he's going after.
always going to try to bring.
Like
the
he's
house
pretty
down.
he's pretty much trying to bring the nightmare in your world.
Oh, that's not cool.
Like what I'm trying to say is like your world is doom if he's in there.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm going to describe what he looks like.
Yeah, please do.
He's a Steve, except he has white eyes. In different videos I've seen him changed, like his mouth is different. Mm-hmm. Usually he's supposed to be smiling like a Steve, or have a straight mouth. It was too weird.
So have you ever seen Herobrine, or you just hear about him?
I mean, I hear him.
You hear about him?
Yeah, I hear about him. I haven't seen him. I tried the spawner once.
And it didn't work. No?
Mm-mm.
How about that? Interesting.
I don't know if he's real or not, but people have been making YouTube videos about him, and they creep me out.
So, but you'll still play the game, right?
I'll still play the game.
Yeah.
I think he's a myth for now.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't think he's going to appear.
But a lot of people believe in him. And I know that there's a lot of YouTube videos and things like that out there that talk about him. And that's one reason people play the game, is because they want to find him, they want to see him, and they want him to prove that he's real or see if he's there, right?
Yeah, like, you can also, if this is the computer version, but the Herobrine that appears is not real. Like, there's the Herobrine mod in the computer. Follow you and do stuff as Herobrine would.
Oh, but it was something you add to the game yourself. It's not like he's in the game.
And this is on the computer.
Oh, okay.
It's not the real Herobrine. It's not the real deal. Don't freak out. It's not actually him.
Okay.
Not the real one.
Right. Now, you recently just made a book about Herobrine at school, right? And they added it to your library at school?
Yeah.
You and a friend of yours made this, is it right?
Oh, no, it was just me.
Just you. This one was just yours?
Yeah.
So how'd that go with your classmates? Did they like that? Did they enjoy it?
Yes, one of the 6th graders wanted it.
Oh yeah, they want to take it home?
I allowed them to take it home.
You allowed them to take it home?
It's called The Glitch.
Well, that was very nice of you.
Basically this story where 2 people go on an adventure. So they made the spawner to see if he would summon on top of it, and they would try to make a plan on him. And then he didn't appear, so they went to bed. And then the next morning they started searching out for him. And then, like, bad stuff happens, like someone gets taken away.
So it's basically about 2 people who found Herobrine, and they're hunting him down, and they're trying to find him, right?
And he threatens them.
Oh, okay. Well, sounds interesting.
And in one
sounds
of the
very
books,
suspenseful.
One of the characters die.
Oh, no, don't spoil it. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. So what's the name of your book again?
The Glitch.
The Glitch?
Well,
shameless plug here for my daughter's book, The Glitch. I can see if I can make a digital copy of that, get it up online.
I'll try to make digital copies if you can.
Well, all right. We'll work on that. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for your time and your expertise on the world of Minecraft. Apparently, a lot of it has to do with Herobrine and the search for Herobrine. So, for those of you who don't know about Minecraft, you might want to look up some YouTube videos, and a good place to start would be with typing in Herobrine. So that's it from us at the Video Game Detectives. Thank you very much, Victoria, for coming in and being my special guest.
You're welcome.
I want to say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Huff-N-Stuff podcast. You sure you're not wasting your time now?
Races I won! That was for you, you know that?
Hey guys! We present our newest magical contributor, Perception Check, where Eric and Ken talk about the world of RPG. Yep, that's right, RPGs. Now here they are!
Hello, and welcome back. This is Ken.
This is Eric.
And we are Perception Check. We're here today to talk about one of the most important parts of role-playing games, and that is finding a group.
Very important.
Now, there's several ways that you can go about this. I remember back in the day when I was in college, before we had like meetup and things of that sort, my buddies and I were just sitting around. Actually, I was just sitting around in my college dorm main lounge area, and a guy would walk up and be like, "Hey, you want to play D&D?" And that was how my group started.
Very social.
Yeah. We started out with like 3 or 4 people, and we're sitting there one night playing, and then this other guy just walks in and goes, "Are you guys playing Dungeons and Dragons?" And that was how we got our D&D group. We had 4 people, and then a 5th guy joined, and that was not even my D&D group, but my central gaming group for my entire time in Pennsylvania.
So that was the opposite. Maybe I was like that guy, because I just forced my friends to play. I was like, hey, I got a D&D book. They're like, great. I'm like, yep, we're playing tomorrow night. They're like, we are? I was like, yes. And that's how my D&D group started. And there was a lot of, actually, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Penny Arcade guys.
I'm familiar with Penny Arcade, yeah.
They started doing a cross-promotion with D&D, Wizards of the Coast, really to promote 4th edition, because 4th edition was just coming out at the time. It's hilarious. They started with a podcast, and it's just fantastic. It is everyone, you picture D&D, you RPGing, you picture guys in a basement listening to Led Zeppelin, black light on, but they actually brought humor to it. They thought, it can be funny. You can have a guy who's just a magician who happens to be a wizard, but his big thing is he travels around and makes doves appear.
Yeah, we had a guy in one of my groups who, of all the first level spells that you could have, the only one that he ever really used, which was, like, none of the basic level spells are of any use in 3.5. So he took prestidigitation, which is basically just making stuff appear.
Yeah.
And we would be in the middle of combat, and he'd be like, wait, I got this! And he would use it and just make something totally random and stupid appear, and we'd all just stare at him, and then the fight would begin.
If you're not as lucky as we are, or as forceful as we are to make our friends play games with us, another place you can go is, I know, online, message boards, meetup groups. Even go into your local game store. I know our game store actually has a bulletin board.
Yeah, our game store has a bulletin board, and it has a kind of devoted RPG community, depending on what you want to play. Really, again, it varies from person to person. You might be a person who enjoys the fantasy role-playing. You might be a person who wants something that's sci-fi, or even something that's dystopian. It really depends on the individual, and it depends on your friends. You might be really into something like Dungeons and Dragons, but they might not be.
Yeah, know your friends. I mean, you should know your friends. If not, you have bigger issues than playing an RPG. You should know they hate Lord of the Rings. Like, 3 of my friends would hate Lord of the Rings. Why would I play a D&D with them? But they love the Matrix, maybe. Shadowrun would be great for them. Cyberpunk would be great for them. Even using GURPS, which it's very little known subject. But
I know of GURPS, but I have no clue how it's played.
GURPS is fantastic. It's a basic RPG rule system, but there's hundreds of tweaks you can add. Things you can make it sci-fi. You can add fantasy elements. You can add race car elements. You can add superhero elements, and it basically stats all these different things. You want to have an RPG where you guys are competing race car drivers. Use GURPS. It's in there.
That's kind of like back when 3.5 was in its prime. Wizards started producing, they would just call them D20 books. Like there was Dungeons and Dragons, which was your fantasy setting, and they had what they called D20 Modern, which was basically Dungeons and Dragons in the modern day and age. But you didn't have to use the Dungeons and Dragons part of that. You could just do whatever you wanted. You could use the D20 system to make like a spy campaign, or if you want to do something like that. Or even
another thing for spies. I mean, I don't know if it's still around. I'm sure it's still in print. But Spycraft.
I've heard of Spycraft. I have no clue.
It is the Mission Impossible RPG, and that is fantastic. It is extremely difficult. But if you have a lot of friends who are big into James Bond, Mission Impossible, things like that, if that sounds like interesting to them, Spycraft is perfect.
And there's really an RPG flavor for everybody. If you have a bunch of friends and you're all don't take this personally, but a bunch of comic book nerds or comic book geeks, there's superhero fantasy or superhero RPG campaigns. I think Legends is one of the more popular ones. And I remember there was a Legends campaign that was run back in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, where they decided to go to the extreme of not taking it seriously at all and turned it into just a giant campaign based around the Tick.
That's always the best. I think when you get a group together it's fun every now and then to get a group together and everyone's dead serious. I mean, it is life or death. You're in there, you're trying to save the princess. But once in a while, it's fun when you get a group together that's like, you know what, let's just screw the quest. Let's just go and rob this guy over here, and then we'll set up shop over here and we'll sell troll hide. I mean, it's fun when you go off page. Now, that being said, you're going to give your DM a heart attack when you do that.
Yeah. Well, really, I think that tests the merit and skill of a DM. I've been in situations where the DM, where you do something that's completely and totally opposite of what they want you to do, and they look at you and they look at all their notes and they just throw their notes in the air and walk away. And then I've had situations where the DM has totally rolled with it. I remember one character I was playing had a huge grudge against elves, and we were in this elven hamlet that was being sieged by drow. And as the drow were leaving, my character refused to let the drow leave and just kept dropping drow after drow after drow. As every time they'd walk away, he would charge one of them. And he ended up dropping, I think, like 4 or 5 drow by himself. And he just let me go with it. And it was he handled it very professionally. Okay, they shoot you with the poison, make the fortitude check to see if you fall asleep. And I rolled probably about 4 or 5 20s, and it took like 6 or 8 darts before I finally passed out.
Well, that goes back to the toughest thing I find about playing an RPG with people you don't know. A lot of times you'll feel embarrassed to do things. Not to say that you're embarrassed playing an RPG, but you don't want to mess people's... Most of the time, if you're joining these groups, they've been playing for a while, so you're joining the group, they have their in-clicks and everything. They're usually maybe even on a quest or a campaign. You're afraid, well, I don't want to do what I think my character would do because I don't want to mess up their campaign. And I think that's really the wrong approach. It's an RPG. You should play your character, even in a group like that, which can be pretty intimidating with people you don't know.
And I've even had DMs where they will actually give you additional experience for playing your character. And that's on the same concept of playing your character. I think that you have to keep in mind that you can't base the personality of a player that you're playing with on how they play the game, because they might just be playing their character. Although on the other end, they might just be a total jerk. But really, you got to talk to them outside of the game.
But I mean, and again, it's just if you want to get into RPGing, there's a lot of things you can do. There's books you can get. Always look for players' guides. D&D, Wizards of the Coast. You know what? Their players' guide for 4th edition is amazing. It's perfect. It's concise. You read that once, you know how to play D&D. And again, a lot of times joining a more experienced group may be intimidating, but once you get that experience under your belt, you can take that back to your friends, and now you have the experience to actually maybe GM a session with them.
Yeah, and that, I think, is a progression that I went through. I started out playing, and then I immediately, after so many sessions, started thinking of these ideas and these stories and wanting to do these stories with my group, and eventually it just snowballed.
And then once in a while you'll get those great game sessions that just friends will continue to talk about it, and those are the best ones.
Yeah, and it really is. It's not just playing a game or telling a story. It's reliving that story with your friends. And I have so many fond memories of D&D campaigns. I don't remember anything of what the campaign was, but I remember these certain things, even if they didn't have anything to do with the story.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Perception Check with Eric and Ken. Be sure to tune in next week where we talk about great RPG stories and great RPG failures.
And the first thing you gotta learn if you're gonna be a race car driver is you don't listen to losers.
And now, it's time for Word of the Day.
That's right, Elise. Now we're on to Word of the Day. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the word fiddly. Now, this is a definition that I got off of BoardGameGeek.com. It requires frequent and excessive mental manipulations to play the game, and physical manipulations, by the way, which tends to detract from the strategic tactical planning to end to bog down the ebb and flow of a game. Some of the examples that I had looked into, Maze Knight, Monopoly, Descent, when you're having to manipulate or trying to, in your mind or physically, having to constantly mess with something on the board, that's when they use that term.
Yeah, I guess I probably have. I guess, Descent did not really jump out to me as being fiddly, and what I've played of Mage Knight with you, I guess it can be a little bit. You're keeping track of a lot of things. I guess one of the complaints you might have I think it's one of your complaints about one of my favorite games, Sentinels of the Multiverse, is very much fiddly, I guess, in the mental sense. There's so much you're keeping track of on the board, on all the cards, that it constantly requires you to stop and look everything over, and then, oh, do I want this card? Oh, no, wait, that effect cancels this, so can I do something else? You know, I guess that would be a very fiddly game in a mental sense. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're not physically manipulating cards, but, you know, that would be something that jumps out to me. I don't think fiddly, I think this is what we say about every word of the day. It doesn't necessarily make it a bad game, but it does detract from certain situations, and it does bog down the play.
I think that's a good thought or a good description of some of these terms, especially fiddly. I think fiddly, like a lot of word of the day, depends on who's saying the word. Because fiddly could mean something to me and it could mean something different to you. To be honest with you, Sentinels of the Multiverse, I wouldn't consider that a fiddly game. I would consider that a lot to manage. And if you've got someone that is on your team, because it's a cooperative game, someone on your team that knows the game well, that knows the cards well, that knows the characters well, can help you in that department. So I don't see that as being a problem or as even being fiddly. I think some games have to have a lot of components, like Descent. Mage Knight also is that way. You have to have these components or else it's not the same game. One of the games that popped up was Merchants of Venus was fiddly. There was a lot of pieces. It's true. It has a ton of pieces. So I would say that all these games, it's a problem that I don't see being solved. I see it a problem that is a minor one. It's just a minor one because all of these games are very playable and very fun. It's just something that I think people like to complain about sometimes.
I think so. I agree with you. You know, I was just looking up, like Betrayal at House on the Hill apparently is tagged with the term fiddly.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I don't think that is fiddly at all. I think, if anything, it's got larger issues to that game. I certainly don't think that fiddly will make or break that game for sure. And being fiddly, it's not that big a deal. And that is Word of the Day.
And it's shaking big time.
Look, Cal, I don't like the way you're talking out there.
Damn the torpedoes!
And now it's time for our main topic.
That's right, Elise. Now we're on to our main topic. Today, we're going to be talking about Formula D. That is the theme of today's episode. And one of the reasons why I thought we should talk about this, because first of all, both Steven and I own Formula D. And one of the reasons why I think we should talk about it, because for a couple of reasons. Number one, I thought Formula D was one of these games that I don't think is given credit or enough due. That's number one. Number two, it's getting a little older now. It came out in 2008, which is amazing to me that it's been around that long. And it's been around even longer than that. It had come out was 1991, and you know that maybe even a year or before that they were actually designing the game. So
yes.
It's amazing to me to think that a game of this caliber has been out for over 10 years, easy. And I thought it would be a good idea to jump into it. I know that it's one of your favorite games, is it not?
It is a very fun game. I like it. I actually ended up buying it. My family, a couple members of my family, my father and my brother, are very much sports fans. So when I was trying to figure out what kinds of games could I play to get my family involved, who weren't so much the type to play board games, was to find something that had a theme that they would be interested in. And Formula D fits perfectly because my brother and my father love racing. And I frankly think that it is a very solid racing game. And it does give a lot of excitement, on par with, kind of watching a race.
It gives the feeling of racing more than any other game of its theme or of its type. Now, let's give you a little bit of background to this game. The designers are Laurent Lavore. Obviously, he's French. Eric Randall is the other designer. ABC, Blackfire Entertainment, and Asmodee are the ones who produced it. It's best with 3 or 4 players. I would even say it scales even better than that. I think it can play with a ton of players. It can play with just 2 people. You just have more cars per person.
Yeah.
The ages are 8 years and up. It takes about an hour, more or less, depending on how many people you have, I think, is the key on that one. It's a racing / push your luck game with the whole being able to take corners with dice. It's a dice rolling and a grid-based game where it's got little squares where your car goes. It's very thematic. It's a sports game. It has many expansions. I think it's up to between 5 and 10 expansions now. And you can even download people's own concocted race tracks from BoardGamesGeek.com. So it got 2009, it got nominated for Best Reprint from the Dice Tower. 2009, it got the Best Party Game, Best Family Game, Best Art from BGG.com. 2009, it got the Best Family Game from Jota Award. 2009, it got Ludoteca Idealia.
Ludoteca.
Official selection winner. It got an award from them as well. So it has a very rich, very honored past.
So, I mean, like we talked about, the game first came out as Formula Day, a German game in 1991. That took a little bit longer to play, I believe. It was a little less refined. The new printing of Formula D by Asmodee Games definitely streamlined a lot of the rules or corrected some errors in the rules, but they play almost identically. So there's obviously the popularity of the game was solidly in Europe because Formula One racing and other types of racing are extremely popular there. They've grown over the last couple decades here in the U.S., although the biggest form of racing here is stock car racing, which this is not. This is definitely road course style formula racing. Now, the game itself, to go back up, it says best with 3 to 4 players on sites like BoardGameGeek.com. I disagree, because if we play with 3 or 4 players, I try to encourage everyone to play with 2 cars. I think if you're playing with less than 5, you want to play with 2 cars to put more cars out on the track. Because it does have a significant effect on gameplay. When you have to pass someone, if there are lanes blocked, it makes it more difficult, and it makes it more interesting and exciting if you get that really good roll to kind of squeeze between people. At the same time, when you play with a lot more people, all 3 lanes on the track might be blocked, and then you have to use your brake points so you don't run into someone, because you have to stop. Can't go into another square where there's another car. So, it adds risk when you have more cars on the board. Playing with 3, which we have done once, was kind of pointless, because you'd either jump way ahead or drop way back, and the board looked empty because the board is long. I'm not sure exactly how many spaces are on these tracks on average, but it's designed to play. I think it takes, if you have 4 or 5 people or 4 to 6 people, it takes about 50 minutes to play 1 lap, I think. If everybody knows what they're doing, it can definitely go faster. So as far as how the game plays, you have a little gear box in front of you that you get to shift. You have a little shift thing that goes in and fits, and each gear is associated with a different sized dice. So you have 6 different dice. There's a D4, a D6, a D8, a D12, a D20, and a D30 is 6th gear. And these are not it's not a 1 to 30 on the D30. It's actually, I think, more like 21 to 30. So there are doubles of numbers, for example. But as you shift up, you use a higher gear. But the problem is, as you go through turns, we have to slow down. You have to land. In the rules, it refers to it as stopping, but people kind of, when they hear stop and they're in a car, you're playing with a car, I tend to run into people thinking that they have to go all the way down, and I have to explain, no, just you have to land in the turn a certain number of times.
Right.
That's one of the catches, I think, in the rules. You have to land in the turn, so you can't just go to gear 6 and fly around the track in 1 lap. If you don't stop at least 1 less than the required amount, so if the turn, for example, requires 2 stops, you have to land at least once, or if you don't stop at all in a 2-stop turn, you're out. Your car crashes, and that's the end of the game for you. If you stop only once, so 1 less, you have to, every space you overshoot the turn takes a point out of a different stat. So if you play the base game, you have a general pool of 18 points of, they call them wear points. And you take a point down every time you overshoot a turn, or you take damage, and there's different rules, but they're all really simple. In the more advanced rules, you have a certain number of points for your tires, for your gearbox, for your engine, things like that. that you lose points out of for different situations. So I haven't played the advanced rules more than once, I think. And I generally enjoy the intro rules because I think it's really interesting to get into and involve people with. And then you still get just as much excitement out of the game.
We played with the advanced rule. Everybody had a blast, and my brother was blown away how good that this game was. It's sort of like, I would even suggest it's a gateway because anyone can play it. Anyone can understand the concept of racing, and the components are just awesome. They have these little rubber cars. The artwork on the board is excellent. You really feel like you're racing. And it's funny because you're rolling dice, and I know a lot of people do not like the game, don't like the randomness of it, but it works really well because just like you were saying, that the dice isn't a full 1 to, like if we were to take the blue 30 dice, it's not a full 1 to 30. It's got all the upper numbers, so when you choose that dice, you're going to get a high number, and so in many ways, you have to plan that out. And by the way, I rarely use the 30. It scares the heck out of me because if you go through that corner, you're going to blow up or crash or whatever. But they have done a number of things with this game that is completely insanely good. For example, like I said, the dice. The corners are ingenious. Who knew? Just by stopping your car or stopping like some of the really hardcore turns, you have to stop 3 times. Some you just have to stop 1 if it's a very shallow curve. Who knew that just coming up with something so simple would work so well?
Yeah, I agree. And one of the catches as far as using those dice, I think one of the big complaints that comes out, the randomness of the dice roll, is there are 2 possible bits that people have an issue with, and it comes down to that. If you land 1 space into a turn, that's your best possible move.
Right.
Is generally considered, because if you land just inside the zone that's marked out on the turn, it means you've landed once, and that means that you can, if it's for example, a 2-stop turn, it means if you have, say, 8 spaces in the turn, you have a very good chance of either landing second or spending very few wear points if you overshoot, which is good. Now, downside of people consider the worst possible move, and it is, if you land 1 space outside of a turn, because then you have to still stop 2 times in that turn, but you're right on top of it, so you have to shift down more, maybe. It's up to you. But if you shift down too far,
whatever,
then you have to, accelerate back up and catch, and it makes it more difficult.
Well, and you could argue that's just like real life. When you're in a race and you're going too fast into a corner, you've got an alternator, you're going to crash just like in the game. So it works really well.
I absolutely agree. And, I think that's one of the things that doesn't bother us so much, if my family that enjoys racing, because it does work very much the way you might expect. If you're really pushing it, yeah, you take that risk of, going up and scraping the wall is what would happen in real life. But,
right.
In the game, you run that risk. So it's up to you. And there are certain circumstances that you can use to your advantage in the turn, trying to move as many possible spaces as you can. Whereas if you're on a straight, you can only move up in one direction, so you can either move from the outside of the track to the inside, or from the inside to the outside, but you can't zigzag to add more spaces.
Yeah.
Is essentially what people would try to do.
Yeah.
So, it means you have to use your brakes. Now there's, you read about people can make some house rules. Maybe you make it so that people have the option to spend a wear point to jump 1 space or something like that. So if you land just outside the turn, they can take a wear point and get inside the turn or something, for example. But, that's available. We've talked about it. People can make house rules, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that to make a more enjoyable game. Whatever you got to do, you do it. And, I personally love the game, and I think it's great because the tracks, several of the tracks, there are, with the Asmodee game, there are 5 expansions, and then the track board that comes in the main box is also double-sided. So there's a total of 12 tracks just with the current printing, and you can use the older versions as well. Just out of the new version, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of the 12 here are real-world tracks that have been raced by Formula One or some other race series, IndyCar. A couple of them are IndyCar tracks, for example. So, I think it's really neat, and the tracks that are based on real-world tracks are very close in design to the real-world track. So it's pretty neat that way, too.
Complaints that often will come out of a game is that games, even they have paste it on themes, or that a game is not thematic enough, or whatever. There's oftentimes you'll hear this part of a critique when there are reviewers and they're talking about games. This is one of the few games, and I say few because it's really hard to make a game fit the theme, like all of the mechanics completely fit and be completely thematic and completely work well. And this, I think, fits perfectly and works exactly the way that most games should. For example, like you said, shifting down with the smaller dice and going into all those things we talked about with the corners and the complaints with people. It so fits so well, this game, and no game that I've ever have I felt so much like I was actually racing. Yeah, I'm not in the car. Yeah, that I could probably play some video game that on Xbox or whatever that can make me feel like I'm more racing or whatever. But regards to a board game, this is as good as it gets, I think.
I think so too. I mean, I haven't played a lot. I don't think I've played any other racing games just because I haven't seen them. But at the same time, that may be because this one is so popular. Now, it's newly printed, fairly 6 years old now, but it's printed very well, it works very well, and I think that's why it's probably the most common one out there. So that's probably why I haven't played any others. Definitely a good game, and I enjoy it. And I agree with you. It is probably one of the best racing experiences you could have on a board game.
And that's a good segue to the next part of this topic is what other examples of racing games are out there? I mean, I looked it up and I was like, gee, I don't even know, because this is the only one that comes to mind. Of course, Jamaica and some other games. As far as like true auto racing games, this is the only one I could think of. So I went online and I was getting people's opinions on some other ones too. Rallyman, Pitch Car, Detroit Cleveland Grand Prix, Formula Motor Racing. And my question was, are these games better or worse than Formula D? Steve and I were talking earlier before we had come on the podcast, and it seems like to me that they're not worse necessarily. They're at that level that Formula D is. I think Formula D is completely won the first place prize in this genre because of how complete the game is. I think you've used this term before, Stephen, and when you have talked about games, and this is a complete game from top to bottom.
Yeah, I do agree. Looking into some of these other ones, Detroit Cleveland Grand Prix, I didn't find a lot of information on. It is older, but that's, I guess, it is considered a pretty good game still. Formula Motor Racing I was looking into, and that's okay. It's simple. It's fast. You're playing cards to affect the position, so you're not so much on a board, from what I understand, as you have cars lined up and you're playing cards that move you around, but have the same effect of, if you jump ahead and you're overtaking someone, the car behind you comes along. And, that, in a way, does reflect real racing, because they would draft you and get right behind you and stay right behind and use your momentum and stay with you as you overtake another car, for example. The mechanics of Formula Motor Racing seemed pretty interesting, even though there is no board, technically. So I wouldn't be opposed to trying that if I could find it, or if I knew anybody who had it.
Sure.
But some of these other ones, you mentioned Pitch Car. We discussed before starting the recording that, it's not really, I wouldn't really argue it's a racing game. It's a dexterity game. We were talking, my comment was, it's kind of like calling slot cars a board game or a tabletop game, because it's played with a bunch of pieces of track and it's on the table. Well, that, it's okay. It's a game, but at the same time, there aren't really mechanics more than you're flicking the little car piece, and it's more like a little puck around the track.
Right.
Now, what is kind of cool about that is I was looking at some of the images of kinds of tracks that people have made for their pitch car games, and you're talking like 2 or 3 tiers, like going up, it's like going up a mountain. You're the kinds of designs and jumps and over other parts of the track, and it does look like a pretty cool game, although, it does seem more like a toy. I guess, it's something.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was exactly going to say that it really, in my opinion, is a toy. And there's nothing wrong with toys. Pitch car is definitely not in the same genre. Detroit Cleveland Grand Prix, now we had brought this up real quick. It seemed like more of an economic game where you're investing and then there's an auction going on inside. They have paper money that you're getting from each position you win, first, second, third, or whatever. And so it's sort of like something you build on. So there's a bit of a campaign going on with the game. All very interesting concepts that, just like you said, like Formula Motor Racing has a very interesting part of the drafting thing that isn't Formula D. But those aren't things that make it games complete. Those are aspects or mechanics that help the game make it more interesting, but it doesn't make or break the game. It's something that's interesting and neat that is inside of it. So that is Formula D, and if you guys haven't tried it, we would encourage you to go try it, and if you like it, call up someone you know and try it tomorrow. I'm telling you right now, you'll love it.
Can't disagree with that at all. You will love it. It's a great game.
And that's our main topic.
Oh, I get it. You want to be entertained some more, do you? Okay, well, let's just see what we can do here. Let's go with an off-topic.
Are you crazy?
That's right. Now we're on to our last segment. So today I thought we should talk about how do we convert people to board games? How can we get converts? And while I was talking to Steven, I had thrown out some thoughts, and so we were like, we're pondering these concepts. And one of the things that I think I had brought up in several different podcasts is, how do you share your passion? Because I know I certainly have a passion about board games.
Oh, yeah.
And so how do you convert these folks? Now, Steven had something really interesting, and I want you to tell the audience about what you had found.
One of the kind of discussions that we had pertaining to this topic was, people have still these days, there are people that have a negative perception on geek culture, perceived as geeky and nerdy. And, frankly, I've moved past that. I think I did have an issue, to be open here. I wasn't as open about my geekiness as I probably should have been for the past several years. And I think that's true for a lot of people. It just depends on the kinds of friends you've had and the kinds of discussions you've had. I've found out over the past couple of years that a lot of friends I had in high school had interests similar to mine that I, for whatever reason, hadn't found out about. But one of these things, anyhow, I came across a video sometime last year, and it came up. I just realized that it was about a year ago that it was posted on YouTube. But it is a video from Will Wheaton, and I know there are people that don't necessarily like Will Wheaton as an actor, but I don't care. I like the guy. I like his sense of humor, and I like what he's done for the board gaming hobby. We had this discussion, and you can find it on YouTube. It's called Will Wheaton, Why It's Awesome to Be a Nerd. And it was a video that he did. A mother who had given birth fairly recently, is the assumption from the video, kind of explained, at the Calgary Comic Expo last April, so April 2013, asked Will Wheaton to if she could record him making a message to her daughter on why it's awesome to be a nerd. And it's about 4 minutes long, so it's not going to take a lot of time out of your day, but it's going to make you happy because he says some really cool things. And the key to the video is he sums it up. He says, it's not what you love, it's how you love it and who you find that loves it along with you that makes being a nerd awesome. Doesn't matter what that it is, whether it's cosplay or board games or video games or comics or whatever, Star Trek, Star Wars, anything. If you love it, it's how you love it and who you love it with that makes being a nerd awesome. And I think the video is really touching and really cool and kind of explains, the change in culture these days. Geeky is not a unaccepted sort of personality anymore. We're geeks and we're awesome and there's a lot of us out there. So, Go find geeks that love what you love.
When we first started talking about how to convert people, how do we share our passion, how do we convert people to play more board games, come to the realization that not everyone's going to have the same interests, number one. Number two, if you don't accept the fact that you're a nerd or you're a geek, or maybe you're not, I always felt a little bit out of it because of my geekiness, because of my stuttering. And at a certain point of your life, you come to the realization that you just kind of accept who you are and you become kind of happy with your existence and who you are. Part of understanding that it's not about converting people necessarily. It's just being happy with who you are and how you're interacting with what you enjoy doing. Because what'll end up happening is you will draw people to you. That's why I believe Will Wheat, Tom Vassell, all these famous people in our industry are drawing people to them in a sense. And I'm really glad, Stephen, you brought this up with regards to Will Wheaton, because he has become an icon for this hobby because of that passion, because of that enjoyment of the game. And every day he wins over another person to the hobby. Last Thursday, let me bring up this story. We had a girl that came over from the ASU West campus, I believe. And she came in, beautiful, young, very intelligent young girl. And she came in, we said hi, you and I. She was very sweet. And we kind of talked to her, and she didn't realize that this friend of hers, or I think it was some roommate, I think actually, that was into miniatures. And so she came over just to kind of see if the store had any, and they do. And so then she was like, what are you guys doing? And so we were able to evangelize about this, and we told her about tabletop, because I know that if someone is passionate, and I know, Stephen, you're a pretty passionate guy, along with me, and because of that, I think in some ways we draw people to us in some way, just like Will Wheaton does. And I think that the best way to convert people, I was sitting there thinking this week about this topic, and I'm like, how are we going to sort of bring this into our podcast? How are we going to discuss this? And it dawned on me, just be happy with who you are, with what you do, just like you said, Stephen, and it tied in perfectly to what I was thinking. Just be happy with who you are. Just do it well, be happy, enjoy the hell out of life, and share it with those people who are open to it. And eventually, you're going to draw more people than you would think you would.
I agree. And I guess, this is us being open hour, I guess, for here. But what people listening can't tell, we've met.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those of us who can't see me, is I'm disabled. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm not severely physically disabled, but I can't walk. I use a power wheelchair to get around.
Right.
And gaming over the past year and a half, a little more than almost a year and a half, has really given me a whole new social scene, a reason to get out of the house and go be social with people and do something that's fun and interesting and something new to add some spice to life. I love it. And as far as converting people to board games, frankly, that's all I do is talk about it. When people ask, oh, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, work's going okay. But what I do is, sure, I'll mention work. Yeah, work's okay. But I don't talk about work all the time. I say, no, I go every Thursday to board game night and have an awesome time playing brand new games with some awesome people.
Right.
And as far to jump back really briefly about Will Wheaton and the show Tabletop on YouTube, without that show, I would not have started going to game night. I would not have looked for a local game shop and found out, because it's the local shop for Imperial Outpost, I looked up on Google Maps, and right on Google Maps, their little entry pops up and it says, Thursday nights, we have board game. And I went, how cool is that?
Yeah.
So I went down, it was the Thursday right after Christmas, last Christmas, and I've been coming almost every Thursday since, and doing the best I can to get down there as often as I can, and it's a blast. And I mentioned our last podcast for Space Games. We talked about I wish I had found out about board gaming in this sense years ago, but that's the best you can possibly do, is go out and look for other people that enjoy what you do. And just be excited about it and talk to people about it. And I've been convincing some cousins to come over and play games. Now, they're not board gamers, but we started with some party games like Apples to Apples. And then I convinced them to try the Resistance. Is a little bit more simple of a game, but it involves everybody. Right. And now this week we're doing one. Later this evening, after I get done with the podcast here, I have some people coming over, and, tonight's rule is everybody has to try a board game, a real board game, once before we pull out. apples to apples or anything else, any other kind of party game tonight. So that's going to be the rule. So that's the best you can possibly do is go meet people and enjoy your hobby.
We're going to end this episode with this, and let me just say, people will sometimes think I'm telling them what to do or I'm giving advice or whatever, but you cannot force people into anything. You can't change people, just like this is one of the reasons why I try never to talk about politics or religion, because people have beliefs and you can't change them. Usually people are set. And it's only when you live your life a certain way and you are happy, have passion for something, that you're going to draw people, and then you can breach that topic. I would like to say that please do not beat people over the head with board gaming. If someone asks you, what is this, whatever, great, jump into it. But do not beat people over the head. You're going to turn people off by that. I know you had mentioned, Stephen, a little earlier that you were not so keen on sharing some of your geekiness with the world history, and I was that way too. I was a little ashamed, to be honest with you. I don't know why I felt that way, and I still kind of keep it quiet because not everyone's going to like that kind of stuff. But I do it. I enjoy it. I make no bones about it when someone does ask me about it. It's just I'm happy, I'm passionate, and usually that'll win someone over, and someone will be more than happy to listen. So at the end of the day, don't get frustrated. Don't get demoralized if your family and friends aren't open. Just go find friends. Go to your local game shop. Go and find on Meetup online. Go to bgg.com and type in your zip code. It'll pop up people around you that are also interested in that. If you haven't checked out BGG, you should. But these are ways that you can find friends of like minds and just have a hell of a time. With that, we are glad you came. Happy you're still listening, and we hope that you come back. Stephen, thank you.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be part of it. So everybody have a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful day or night where you happen to be. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining the Huff-N-Stuff podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening and hope you can tune in next time. Huff-N-Stuff is brought to you by Southwestern Valley Gaming Group at swvalleygamingsgroup.webs.com. You can visit us on our webpage at huffnstuffpodcast.webs.com. That is HUFFNSTUFF podcast.webs.com. We love to hear from you, so leave us questions, feedback, or just say hi. As always, keep on smiling and game on.